Hey everyone, Frank again here for Geekery Collective, and welcome to part 4, the final episode of our mini-series on the Zelda timeline. This final segment doesn't really have so much to do with the timeline, as it's more of a fun little extra bit I thought I'd go over, as I'm not sure too many people have actually considered this. At the end of Ocarina, if Zelda sends Link to a time before Ganondorf attacks the castle in pursuit of Zelda in the Ocarina, then how did Ganondorf acquire the Triforce in Twilight Princess?
Remember, Ganondorf obtains the Triforce after Link pulls the Master Sword in the original timeline. Link pulls the Master Sword after he obtains the Ocarina. Link obtains the Ocarina from Zelda while she and Impa flee from Ganondorf on horseback. At the end of the game, though, Zelda isn't fleeing, but is instead peeking through the window of the courtyard as when we first met her. So if adult Zelda sent Link back far enough before all of this happens, how does Ganondorf get the Triforce in a timeline where he doesn't already know or think to follow Link into the Temple of Time? He hasn't even met the kid yet. As far as I know, it's never really been explained or answered anywhere. So to answer this, let's check out what's going on in Twilight Princess. At the Arbiter's grounds, one of the sages says, he was the leader of a band of thieves who invaded Hyrule in the hopes of establishing dominion over the Sacred Realm.
In the hopes of establishing dominion. This means Ganondorf did indeed betray the kingdom after being outed by Link, but he was still searching for the Triforce.
There was no little kid in green for him to follow this time. Ganondorf needed to search the hard way, but Ganondorf was captured, and his execution was botched because the Triforce of Power prevented him from being killed. Which I'm assuming, by holding the Triforce of Power, it grants the holder an extended amount of life or stamina? A 1-up maybe? I mean, before, a sword to the chest would have killed a man, but now it takes more than just one stab wound. The Master Sword's needed to subdue him now. Maybe? At any rate, how did he get the Triforce all of a sudden? Even the sages were shocked at this, as another sage expresses, yet, by some divine prank, he too had been blessed with the chosen power of the gods. This revitalization the Triforce granted Ganondorf allowed him the strength to just break the chains that bound his hands. Now, if Ganondorf already had the power of the Triforce, why wouldn't he have just escaped earlier, or used the same dark magic he's used on Link before in the past? He is a wizard after all.
There's just no logic to letting himself get captured. The only thing that saved him from being executed was the Triforce of Power. So what gives? Unless he already had the Triforce, but he wasn't even aware of it. Let me explain.
In the adult timeline, Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf had their respective pieces of the Triforce as a result of Ganondorf entering the Sacred Realm. Since Ganondorf's heart wasn't in balance when he touched the Triforce, he got power, because that's what he pursued the most. Wisdom went to Zelda, and courage went to Link. So at the end of Ocarina, when adult Link and Zelda are saying goodbye, they still have their respective Triforce pieces. As does Ganondorf, only he's been sealed away with it. So when adult Zelda sends adult Link back to his childhood, does that mean Link is still carrying his piece of the Triforce as a child? Yes, actually. At the end of Ocarina, when young Link is approaching young Zelda in the courtyard, if you notice, he's still carrying his piece of the Triforce. He actually uses this as evidence to validate his claims against Ganondorf and what would happen if he were left unchecked. So if Link is still carrying his piece of the Triforce in the child timeline, what does that say about the other two pieces? Well, there was the complete Triforce, Power, Wisdom, Courage, assembled together in the Sacred Realm. Don't forget, they haven't been scattered by Ganondorf in this timeline. But now there's this alien piece of the Triforce of Courage Link brought into the timeline. I highly doubt there are now two pieces of Courage in existence in the same timeline.
In order to understand what's happening, at least how I made sense of it, I'm gonna have to show just how much of a nerd I am, if I haven't already with this whole thing. But I think the Triforce might actually behave similarly to the Legend rule in Magic the Gathering. The shorthand of it is, if there are two or more cards of the legendary type with the same name in play, one is kept while any others are put in the discard pile. Basically, if something legendary is to exist, there can only be one instance of it. No duplicates. You couldn't have, let's say, a bunch of Marty McFlys existing at the same time. Now, I don't actually have any real proof that this is what's happening, but hear me out, and I think it'll actually make some sense.
If there's a piece of the Triforce roaming around with Link in a timeline before the Triforce as a whole was scattered by Ganondorf, that means there's still the Triforce pieces of Power, Wisdom, and the pre-existing piece of Courage also in this timeline, right? But following that Legend rule, because you can't have two instances of the same Triforce piece, when young Link arrives to this new timeline, his piece of the Triforce pops in with him and supersedes the pre-existing Triforce of Courage in the Sacred Realm. The Triforce as a unit cannot be incomplete within the Sacred Realm, so this forced the other two pieces to to scatter to their respective owners. This would have caused Ganondorf and young Zelda to inherently obtain the Triforce piece that corresponded to them. At least I would assume, and if so, how would either of them even know if they did? I mean, Link doesn't even learn he has the Triforce of Courage until Sheik tells him. So if that's the case, and neither Zelda nor Ganondorf knew they had a piece of the Triforce, that would explain why at the moment of near death, the Triforce of Power activated within Ganondorf. He'd been carrying it all this time. He just wasn't aware until he absolutely needed it. This is the only logical way I can see how Ganondorf was able to receive the Triforce of Power during his execution in Twilight Princess at a time when no one, not the kingdom, not the sages, not even he, knew he had it.
The divine prank being Link saved the world only to outright hand Ganondorf a piece of the Triforce by mistake. Alright, so to recap everything,
the third timeline does occur and does lead with A Link to the Past, not due to Ganondorf defeating Link in Ocarina or some multiverse theory BS, but instead occurs as a result of Link going back in time the first instance when he needed to beat the Spirit Temple. The third timeline shouldn't be called Hero is Defeated, but Hero is Absent. Zelda 1 and 2 don't actually take place on the newly named Hero is Absent timeline, but rather as the last entry to the adult timeline. The King's Wish and Wind Waker washed away the Old Kingdom. Link and Tetra eventually founded New Hyrule just north of the region of the Great Sea that was Old Hyrule. During this New Hyrule's history, Princess Zelda the first as far as this New Hyrule's aware of, was put into an eternal slumber. At some point before or after the events of Zelda I, the floodwaters had receded, revealing nothing but the barren land that was once Old Hyrule. New Hyrule attempted to expand their territory to the lands of Old Hyrule, recolonizing and establishing a secondary kingdom to the new one. However, Ganondorf's resting place within the stone from Wind Waker was disturbed, releasing his spirit. He then rampaged across the land as Calamity Ganon, resulting in the events of Breath of the Wild. It may be that he possesses a new body as Pig Ganon and somehow obtains the Triforce of Power, only to be sealed away again by Link and Zelda in Breath of the Wild. Though Ganon now has the Triforce of Power again, the royal family at least still holds onto wisdom, and courage is locked away elsewhere. With the remaining buildings like the Temple of Time having finally eroded, crumbled, and covered with overgrowth over the years, nothing remains but the last few underground dungeons and sparse inhabitants found only among caves in the land of Old Hyrule. Eventually, Ganon escapes from his seal once again, causing havoc in the lands of Old Hyrule, driving out any remaining villages. Link from Zelda 1 finally kills Ganon with the silver arrows and takes back the Triforce of Power. And finally, in Twilight Princess, the only reason Ganondorf gets the Triforce is because when Link was returned to his childhood in Ocarina, he brought his piece of the Triforce of Courage with him, forcing the other two pieces to scatter to their respective owners. Ganondorf was in pursuit of something he'd had all along, he just wasn't aware of it.
alright, all the loose ends are tied up in a pretty little bow and everything makes far more sense. At least for now, somewhat. At the time of this recording, Breath of the Wild isn't out yet, so all this theorizing could just be completely thrown out the window. But if anything out of this, my only hope is that the official timeline be revised enough to rename the third timeline as Hero is Absent and acknowledge the reinterpretation of time travel causing the third split, as well as reconsider and revise the placement of Zelda 1 and 2 and the tragedy of Zelda I onto the adult timeline. It does solve some discrepancies otherwise left there if it remained on the Heroes Defeated side. I love what Nintendo tried to do with the Hyrule Historia, though I kind of wish they'd called it the Book of Medora for flavor. I think it's a great asset to the world of Zelda, but only in the sense that we get to see art from the games we might not have normally seen. Because, let's be real, I get the sense they only pushed it out as a cash grab. Fact is, this was Zelda's 25th anniversary at the time, and people had been calling out for an official timeline for so long. The demand for it was there. And all in all, it's more of an art book to Skyward Sword first and foremost, as that was the product they were selling at the time. It's a minor art book to the other games secondly, and the official timeline really just feels like an afterthought with all the holes in it. Think about it. The Heroes Defeated timeline almost acts as a trash bin for anything that doesn't jive with Aonuma's vision for the rest of the series, paying no mind to the pre-existing game's lore and the world of Zelda made before it. I mean, seriously, has no one noticed this? He didn't work on Zelda 1 or 2, A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, nor the Oracle series, and yet all those games are just dumped off in this bastard child of a multiverse that is the Heroes Defeated timeline. Really trying to keep these games away from your precious Wind Waker timeline, aren't you? All due respect to Aonuma and Miyamoto and anyone and everyone who worked on a Zelda title. That's a huge honor. It is one of the greatest and most influential series in video gaming history. But come on, you gotta criticize some of their choices. Same thing that happened when George Lucas started to lose focus with Star Wars, and a good portion of his fans called him out on midichlorians and Jar Jar. As chief editor over the timeline for the Historia, Aonuma had final say. If he really had a top secret file hidden away with the timeline completely laid out, I don't think he really considered everything on the table in front of him. Or he did and he didn't care, trying to keep his vision of Zelda separate from any games he personally didn't make. Or, benefit of the doubt, he just genuinely didn't know what to do with those games, or other external influences forced him to go the route it has. It also wouldn't be the first instance of a timeline put out by Nintendo or even the father of Zelda, Miyamoto, being wrong. Miyamoto is the father of the series, but he isn't nearly as involved anymore as Aonuma is. Like I said, Zelda 1 reveals the story of a princess of Hyrule named Zelda I, whom all other Zeldas are named after, yet somehow there's still a Zelda prior to Hyrule as a kingdom in Skyward Sword. So to fix that, Zelda I's story is just lumped off much later on the defeated timeline? What? For God's sake, get it together, guys. Does nobody check what their writers are doing for continuity? I mean, I get that most of the time story comes second to gameplay and mechanics when it comes to game design, but I kind of feel they did this to themselves by bolstering and confirming an actual timeline. At first it was just fan speculation, but now that there is an official timeline, well, when you take a step back and look at it, it really makes no sense. At least the timeline they're pushing on us. I don't mean to insult Aonuma or Miyamoto or anyone, it's not my intention. I only question their choices and judgment. It just is kind of sketchy that all the games Aonuma didn't make are placed in the Heroes Defeated timeline after his taking over of the series. Developer bias, perhaps? Maybe just a little? I don't know. I love this series, just as many fans do. And I get it. At the end of the day, it's just a game meant for entertainment. This series means a lot to me, though. It means a lot to a lot of people. It is a launch title for a reason. People love it and it sells. But why continue to buy into something if the developers are just going to keep fudging around with their own lore and then discredit a set of games altogether as a multiverse? All I'm saying is, I would just rather see the flow of this story that is the Legend of Zelda make a lot more sense. And this timeline has become something of a puzzle all its own. It needs to be solved. At least what I'm proposing, I think, does a better job considering and reorganizing some important elements. Well, that's the end of this little mini-series. I hope you enjoyed it and I at least got you reconsidering the official timeline. I can't say I know for certain where Breath of the Wild falls on the timeline, but something definitely needs to be done about that Heroes Defeated branch and the placement of Zelda 1 and 2. I look forward to playing Breath of the Wild as it looks amazing and I can't wait to see what sort of disruption it will have on the timeline. And with that, I want to thank Geekery Collective, Connor Jones, Professor Matt Powers, the School of Informatics and Computing at IUPUI, and everyone who helped us bring these videos together. And thank you all for watching. Take care, everybody. Hey everyone, thanks again so much for watching our videos on the Zelda timeline. If you enjoyed them, here are some other videos you might enjoy as well. If you haven't seen the first 3 videos, what are you doing here at the end already? Go back and check them out. Anyway, once again, don't forget to like and subscribe.